Let's graph a line. Your first step will be to choose from one of the three options for lines that I've given you. Remember that an equation for a line is going to be parametric in our 3D plane, so you'll have three equations to write down to stand for one line. The next step is to make a table. Remember that you'll want to have a T column, an X, a Y, and a Z. And then just choose some T values. I suggest 0, 1, and 2. Plug those in and see what kind of X values you get. So the 0 into the X equation, the 1 into the X equation, and the 2 into the X equation. Same thing for the Y equation. Plug in a 0, plug in a 1, then plug in a 2, all for the Y equation. Now we're on the Z equation, plugging in a 0, then a 1, and finally a 2. From that table, we'll choose two of those points, since 2 points determine a line. I'll want to stay away from any points that have negative values, since we only graphed octant 1, so I've chosen the ones that go with t equals 0 and t equals 1. I also feel good about these points because of the x equals 0. I know that point will be on the YZ plane, and my other point that has a y equals 0, that point will be on the XZ plane. Next, I'll find one more point that's on that line, and I'm going to choose one that lands right between those 2 points that I already found. So I'm going to choose t equals half since it's between 0 and 1. Any t value between 0 and 1 will work. And here I am filling out the table again from the equations for that line. Time to find something around the house that could be used for graphing a line. String, straw, skewer, wire, whatever you can find. Go ahead and locate those 2 points that we found in step 3. Carefully counting on your model. I'm just going to use a marker to put my dots. Remember, those 2 points should be on my planes. I decided to use string for my line, so I'm going to poke some holes without getting a puncture wound into those 2 points so I can string that string through there. Maybe you'll use hot glue or something, depends on what material you're using for the line. One more thing I need to add is that point. Remember, I found one more point that lands somewhere on that line. So I decided to string a bead on to stand for my point. You could use a piece of tape, something that indicates where your point is on the line. Here I'm using some tape to secure my line to the back side of my box. My line turns out a little droopy, and nobody likes a droopy line, so I adjusted it a little bit at the end. Now I need to adjust that bead so it's at my actual point. So I'm just going to slide it until it looks like it's at an x value of 3.5. Then I'll want to check to make sure that the y value also looks like it's at 3 and the z value is at 5, all at the same time. So it's kind of a delicate process of moving that bead so that you get all 3 coordinates lined up right. I just used a big old piece of tape to keep that in place. You don't need to show me the table you made, but instead I'll just have you label the points that you found right on your model. I use little post-it notes, but you could write them straight on the cardboard and somehow label that point that is actually in octant 1. Somewhere on your model, make sure that you post the equations for your line too. Finally, you want to take the 2 photos that you need to submit to me, strategically placing your camera so that I can see that that point is lined up right where you said it would be. Mine was at 3.5, comma 3, comma 5. And that'll be the evidence that you completed this part of the project.